Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Drexter Dupre. We are obviously doing the show at a different time today, 5 o'clock Second Life time, which is 2 o'clock 2 a.m. in the morning, my local German time. But that does not matter. If you feel sorry for me, please don't, because for the cause of giving books the love they deserve, I'm always at the ready. And I also took a long nap. The reason why we're doing this at a different time is, of course, we have a stellar panel of Australian authors, and while virtual worlds have brought us closer together, time zones are still keeping us apart. Anyways, I don't have a laugh track here. Okay, well, I worked on this one for a long time. That's fine. Thank you. Uh, Meg is my laugh track. I'll introduce the panel in just a moment. A few housekeeping notes. We'll get right into it. Normal time for the show is 12 o'clock Second Lifetime. We're now booked until April 2021. And we have a brand new show focusing on mystery writers hosted by Con Sweeney that's coming next Monday at 6 o'clock Second Lifetime. If you click the panel behind me, you'll get the full calendar. Here at the book club, we welcome elapsed readers. If your last novel was assigned to you back in high school, you can come on in. Please be friendly to the noobs that you may see stumbling around, people just rezzing in SL because this is on the featured destination. They come to the book club, they don't know what's going on. You can help them, befriend them, recommend a book. Please join the group, suggest a show idea by sending me an email or a message. And talking about noobs, there is a fella by the name of Bubba's Mullet, and he is clearly from the 1970s, and he is right here on stage. Welcome, Bubba Smollett. You can edit your appearance in the background there. We don't mind. Just keep the transistor radio low that you're holding. I put out a reading list on bookshop.org every week. The reading list is actually already up. It's bookshop.org/shop/Dragster Reads. If you click on any of the books that are lying around here on the floor on the table, that will shoot you to the bookshop.org reading list. Big fan of bookshop.org. They're not sponsoring us, but I do like their business model. And there are also links for some Australian authors that are not published through bookshop.org quite yet. So you can go through that link. I'd like to thank our team, Strawberry Linden, Brett Linden, Patch, and the governance team. Marian McCann customized the venue. Kralos dresses up the avatars. Silas makes special swag and the custom avatars. We have a partnership with Slink. They're making fine Second Life skins, and all the new authors are wearing Slink exclusively, including me. Now let's introduce our wonderful panel, starting from stage left. We have Anna Waitley, author of a marvelous debut novel, Peter Liar's Rating Normal. And that's about a teenager on the autism spectrum and diagnosed with a whole bunch of other things too, including ADHD. She navigates the, well, very normal high school life, including romantic encounters. And we can also follow her internal monologue in the book that shows her intense struggle with those, yeah, well, normal situations, normal for us, not normal for her. Hello, Anna. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. And your book is really extraordinary. All these books here, I'm reading on a schedule now because the book club is exploding. So I don't, I'm looking at my calendar in the morning. What do I have to read today? But I'm still totally enjoying it. And your book was incredible. So we'll talk about it
Thank you.
in detail. We also have a lot of reading today, so don't worry, it's not me in a monologue mode. Anne Robinson is Alice Robinson. Sorry, Alice Frances Robinson, right next to you, author of two books, Anchor Point and The Glad Shout. The Glad Shout is a dystopian cli-fi climate fiction novel set in a post-storm Australia. Follows a mother and a young child trying to survive with flashbacks to the main protagonist's childhood as well. It sets up an interesting sort of generational look at things. That's how I read it. I also read it as a kind of a Octavia Butler Parable of the Sower type story. It's a wonderful novel. Hello, Alice. How are you?
Hello, thanks for having me.
Do you feel good in your embodiment, in your Vilma embodiment?
Yeah, I think it's very fitting. Thank you.
I hope we're not going to get into any copyright trouble. On the other end side of me, sofa-wise, is Meg Mundell. She just came from the ocean out there. She's the author of The Trespassers and other books. In The Trespassers, it's also climate related. Refugees or guest workers, actually, I would say they leave a pandemic stricken Europe and they try to get to Australia where jobs and a new life may wait for them. It's a very timely book with viruses, people wearing masks, some don't. Meg, thank you for predicting the future in this book.
I'm sorry about that. It wasn't the jolliest future I could predict.
I don't think anybody could have predicted the mess we're in. Damon A. Young may have. He's the author of 12 books on philosophy, and the philosophy here is sort of everyday life related. You see the books on the table, martial arts, gardening, and reading. I only read one book of yours, Damon, The Art of Reading, which I loved. You are very pro Star Trek novelization and very anti Dan Brown. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You know, if Dan is watching this show, he'll get mad and you'll get hate mail. But I love this book, The Art of Reading, and the next one is going to be Distraction, another book of yours, which I hope will help me advocate against distraction, if there's such a thing, if you can control it. You know, I don't know. Hello, Damon.
Good day.
Now, the topic today is very broad, as you can see behind me. The announcement image, it says "Breaking News: Australia writes," and it does read too. So let's discuss: is Australia actually reading and writing? And I'm fully aware that Australia is huge, and there's a huge desert in the middle. And but you know, I put this theme out there because I wanted to know from you guys. We can make the round. Just a quick assessment. Is reading in decline in Australia? Do you guys have the same conversation as they have in the US and Europe? What's the situation? What's the scene like? And anybody can jump in.
Oh, there's a very healthy reading and writing scene here in Australia. We don't have the population of somewhere like the US, which can make it more difficult for authors to earn a sustainable living. But there's a really active reading and writing scene here, lots of libraries and wonderful bookshops. And since the pandemic hit, there's been a lot of stuff moved online, so lots of online events amongst the writing and reading community.
And so this is a community where you guys are communicating with each other. Are there cliques? Are there genre-related cliques? Is Damon in every one of these cliques because he also writes children's books, and other people are sort of sectioned off into the Cli-Fi subgroup, or how is that sort of going? Is there sort of intersectionality going on?
I think it's too small to really have cliques. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, one tour of the festival circuit is sometimes enough to meet everyone you're going to meet for the next 10 years. I mean, of course, there are some people who are excluded, and we're getting better at this, but it's a small country and a small scene. I will say, though, one thing in favour of the Australian literary industry is that we have really strong independent bookshops, whereas I know that in somewhere like the US, Amazon has a ludicrous share of the market, and that just isn't the case here yet, and that's healthy.
So that's interesting. So the scene is, I was right. The scene is rather small. So the breaking news is that as small as it is, people do read and write, and they stick together.
I think that's also compounded by the fact that because the scene's so small, a lot of the writers who are emerging and who are even more established also work in those independent bookshops or in publishing. So it doesn't take, like Damon said, it doesn't take very much to get to know all of the key players, and therefore it's very supportive because you've encountered someone in a bookshop and then a couple of years later they're publishing their first collection or something like that. And so it's tight-knit, and I think it's just really lovely. Like, I feel like it's a beautiful cohort of people who all just have each other's best interests at heart, because we know how hard it is to sell books in a small population like Australia's.
Yeah.
I think it's really collegial in that sense.
That does sound great. Cayenne says in the local chat that it's like an intimate setting there, where with mutual respect. Anna, would you agree with that? You're the debut premiering with your first novel here, but you've been teaching as well.
Yeah, so I've worked with books for a long time, but I didn't actually understand the author community when I was an academic. But as a new writer and in young adult fiction, I was just so happy to find out that there was such a community with the Love Oz YA hashtag that sort of unifies everybody, and you can find each other easily. And then that whatever happens, you've got that support behind you. Love Oz YA for young adult, Love Oz MG for a middle grade. There's a PB for picture books. It just helps us find each other on Twitter normally, and then on Instagram and Facebook as well. But it's just been quite a revelation to find out what a community there is behind the Australian writers there. It's great.
That's fascinating. And Damon, you said, to me this sounds like everything where Amazon is not the dominant force. To me, sounds like a paradise where I want to move to. But how do the local outlets then handle overseas distribution? Because some of your books are not available, for example, through bookshop.org, and they're positioning themselves as the anti-Amazon. They want to strengthen local events, but they're US only. They're growing. They're adding Canada now, but some of the books are not available. By the way, the book Dragster Reads list, I put links to your websites as well. So if you go to our normal reading list, you will go directly to the author's website as well. But how is that a problem? The availability of books, Damon?
Not personally, no. But I mean, the reason I can sell overseas is because I sell the rights to publish overseas, and I sell translations. So if my books were only published in Australia and then they had to be distributed overseas, all of them, I mean, that would be much more difficult, and that is a problem when you're in the sort of literary provinces. The books tend to go one way. So if something's published in the UK or in the US, chances are it's going to be published here and in New Zealand. It doesn't go the other way around. So often the only way to secure that distribution and to secure a healthy income is to sell the rights, to various countries and translations. And just being perfectly honest here, there's no way I could make a living as an author if I only published in Australia, just because the audience isn't big enough.
Well, what we hear,
I've had huge troubles getting my book, because I have a lot of people in the ADHD and autism community overseas, and they have to order from Australia and have it shipped, because we haven't got as far as selling international rights because of the virus and the Bologna Book Festival. All the time, places where they sell in person, sell those rights, were cancelled. So I don't know what will happen there, because I'm very new, but exactly what Damon's saying is to get them easily accessible overseas, even on Amazon or anything. You can't get that because it's only Australian and New Zealand rights are sold at first for me. Yeah.
So that also means you're saying that the Australian publishers, I mean, they have to, I mean, traditionally they go to these overseas book fairs and gatherings physically. And because that's not happening during lockdown, this whole selling the foreign rights is delayed, until further notice, is I guess what you're saying. So they're not even doing deals
They try and do it,
online.
through contacts. Yeah, they try and contact people virtually to do those things for my agent. But from what I know, I think publishers are being a little bit nervous, a little bit cautious to see what's going to happen before they invest in, especially in an Australian or a local fiction, localized as mine is to Australia. Yeah,
Right.
don't know how the others have found that.
My books are only sold in Australia. Only the rights in Australia have been sold to my 2 novels. But I just wonder what you all think about this. It seems to me, and I think there's a different kind of perception of these things when you're just a writer versus, in some other position in the industry. So I don't know, but it just seems to me from my position that there's a kind of perception that maybe international audiences are not that interested in really Australian-centric books. And I feel that my work particularly is seen as very Australian, and I think that would be a fair assessment. I write about the land, I write about climate change in Australia and about Australian lives. And that there's this kind of idea, and I don't know if it's part of the cultural cringe or if it's actually legitimate, that international audiences potentially wouldn't go for those stories as much as they might a story set in Europe or America written by an Australian.
Very interesting. What do you guys think? Because this to me echoes a conversation with marketing people in the music business where I'm from. And some people just say things because it's always been like that, and they have some numbers where you're not privy to looking at them. And then it turns out it's actually quite the opposite. If you then go on a tour in those territories, but anyway, do the other people on the panel see that in similar ways that a local theme?
I think what Alice is saying is, I think it's true. I think there is a perception that Australian stories, if you can call them that, won't translate or won't be of interest overseas. But I think it's also it's not easy to sell international rights to Australian books. So I think there's some truth in that perception that maybe US audiences are not hugely interested. Although there was a little group of crime writers who did sort of a tour around the US recently, and went down really well, I think. So maybe we need some more of them if airplanes ever get up in the sky again.
I find it frustrating that it's so contingent on physical meeting. One of the things that we could learn about this crisis is that maybe we should really restrict non-essential travel. I find these negotiations could very well happen, virtually speaking. But I would actually like to move to get a little taste of what you guys are writing next before we continue on this topic. And let me also remind viewers, if you're just tuning in, this is a special time today, sitting here with a wonderful panel of Australian authors. And it's really hard for me as an amateur and bad German comedian, all these things are true, to not go into an Australian accent. In the local chat, Stella was asking, do you get a fair price on your rights when you sell the rights to the other countries? And Meg is saying, depends on how good your agent is at negotiating. Ghostspeed says, Australia is not boring. And Stella says, that is like saying Mary Austin or Steinbeck have no value beyond California readers. That's an interesting point. Now, I brought up here on stage Anna's book, Peter Liars, Rating Normal. And Anna and I will be reading this together. I will be here in the background because Peter is. Do you want to set this up, Anna? Who is Peter, the star of this book?
Peter? I should know. Peter
Liar. I could tell you.
Yeah, you do it. It's much more interesting when other people do it.
So Peter, for me, is I actually don't know how old she is, but I
16.
think
Yeah.
16. So Peta is diagnosed with a whole bunch of things. ADHD. She's on the autism spectrum, and she encounters in this book things that are like I said earlier, very normal. There is romantic encounters and trials and tribulations. They go on a skiing trip, um, and she narrates her. She comments on what is happening constantly in her own head, to as sort of a manual to act normally, to remind herself how she is supposed to act in these social situations, as she has learned probably through therapy and experience, because she doesn't trust her. And at the end of each chapter, Anna, you basically uh, put her self rating, um, 5 out of 10 on the normal scale, which is the scale that
Yeah.
she imposes upon herself.
Yeah, it varies according to how she thinks she's gone. And that develops over the novel. It's sort of a shorthand way to communicate to the reader how she felt about what had happened. But obviously, the part of the purpose of the novel is to reconcile that with and develop from there. But yeah, so she does hear a lot of the rules and also ruminates and things. And I used italics, which is why Drax is helping me to read it out, because reading out italics, well, it's just weird because you can't see what I've done there on the page. So he's going to help me.
Right. And can I please ask the others to mute their mics while we're reading? I know it's a little noisy. So her internal monologue is in italics. In this particular scene, Peta is talking with her friend Jeb, and there is a new girl at the school, Sam, and Peta, I think it's fair to say, has a crush on Sam, but she does not know if Sam would reciprocate these feelings or where she should go with this at all. So it's very new. And in this conversation, they're talking about getting together uh, in a social situation with Jeb, her longtime friend. And then it comes out that Sam may actually be joining them, right? And so
Jeb
it's unclear.
invites her, which is a big change in their routine on
Right.
a Thursday where they normally go down and have fish and chips. So that's what's happened. Yeah, he's invited Sam just to be polite, and this is just what follows that. Really, would you like
Okay.
me to start, Drex?
Let's go, Anna.
Okie dokie. So Peta says, oh no, sorry, Sam replies to the invitation and says, I can't do today, maybe next time. She doesn't say why. Jeb looks disappointed, I think. It's one of the harder expressions.
We have this new program, Peta. For each face, click on the emotion you see. And look, there are reward stars.
Sure, see you later, he says. I watch him walk away. His dark hair shines almost blue sometimes, especially when it's dirty. He punches Big Cat on the arm as he passes her. She tries to get him back, but he's too fast, and laughs as he weaves through the other tables. He's nice. Are you two a thing? Sam is asking me a question.
Replay the words and respond accordingly. He's nice. Are you two a thing?
What? He is nice. That's why he's my friend. I try to sound sarcastic and earnest at the same time. Yeah, but is there potential for more? She's hinting at something, but I don't know what she's actually saying. This doesn't happen to me much anymore. I've forgotten what to do.
When you're really stuck, try asking for more information.
As in, more friendship? My mind feels sluggish. I can see every muscle in her face, and I'm trying to read every movement. Her eyebrows are up. She's not angry. Maybe she's surprised or shocked. Her head is tilted strangely, and I can't see her eyes. When I try to, I just see the curls on her forehead and think about Betty Boop. More friendship, she says in a flat voice, and then whacks her leg against my leg. As in, is it a simmering, long haul, will they, won't they situation? She puts sushi in her mouth after her comment, so now I can't even try and read her face.
Don't cry.
Oh, I realize it's like plots in English, romance plots. Romance with Jeb? She says. She chokes a bit and laughs into her napkin. I'm stuffing this up badly, and I haven't had a close female friend before. They're hard work and talk about people instead of things. Romance, you're hilarious. She's laughing. Jeb's a mate.
If you like someone, be a mirror for their body language and emotions.
I like watching her face. Oh, I laugh watching her face for a clue what to do next. Okay, just checking. Don't want to be a third wheel or anything. Third wheel? I check the time on my phone and stand up. The coffee and tablets aren't enough to make me normal. She has short hair and doesn't do her homework. She says things in a confusing way. She's hard work, dangerous.
Run.
It's all good, Sam. No third wheel. I hope that's the right thing to say. Coming to English? I've got an appointment with the guidance counsellor. She wants to check up on the new student. She rolls her eyes and continues to eat her sushi. I have no idea what just happened. Normal rating, 5 out of 10. Inhale, exhale, survive.
And that's Anna Wadley's Peter Lyer reading normal. Rating
hang on.
normal. We're reading normal.
We did well. That was good. Thank you.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful, Anna. This is and again, we should have said that Peter is narrating in first person, and then again, she's reminding herself how to act. Can we make sure that we have all mics muted when the other people read, because there is some noise in the background? Please do mute your mics, folks. It's loud at times. Now, Anna, you are also how would you're not self-diagnosed, but you're very open about your situation. How would you describe your personal makeup?
Sorry.
I don't even know if that's the right term.
Yeah, don't worry. So I am diagnosed the same. Yeah, it's all right. I'm diagnosed the same as Peter, with autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorder. I think she's smarter than me, even if we're both technically gifted. But I'm pretty sure she's more clever than I am. And I was never not diagnosed at that age. I was much older, and and so she has medication and everything. But obviously, she's 16 and she already has all of that knowledge and had a lot of social training and therapy on how to be. And part of my question writing the novel is what would happen if someone got that all right, all the things that they throw at neurodivergent people on how to behave. What if you actually did all of those things? What would happen? And of course it all goes quite wrong, because it's just not actually possible, and it's not what neurotypical people actually do either. And that's part of the realization and in the process of the book.
It's really wonderful, and I want to ask you more questions later. We're going to go through the round and have more readings first, and then we'll sort of circle back and ask questions. Also, let the audience chime in as well. I when I read it, I just want to add this. It is so illustrative, and it's also reminded me, and I work with a lot of people with disabilities, how as would self-classify as a patient person, I'm actually quite way less patient than I would like to be. And I'm reading here with her internal monologue again how difficult these normal situations are for her, and it really it's very, very eye-opening. We have a lot. I'm sorry, I have to say this again. We have a lot of noise and pings in the background. So while we're reading, please do mute your mics, because we're also releasing this as an audio podcast. I'm talking about the other panelists, so please make sure you mute all the mics that you have. There's a lot of noise in the background. Thank you. And Alice, if I may ask you to come up on stage, as magically the book in the bookstand changes to your book, The Glad Shout, which I enjoyed very much as a stay-at-home dad. It's not about stay-at-home dads, it's about mothers. But I relate to all mothers as a stay-at-home dad who, I mean, my wife and I raised our son together, but I was the one at home doing the dishes and changing the diapers. Okay, what are you are going to read for us? And please set up the story, if you will.
Thank you. So The Glad Shout is the story of a mother who's in her 30s, Isabel, and her 3-year-old child, Matilda. And a big storm comes and destroys the city of Melbourne where they live. It's set in the near future, not that far into the future. In my mind, it was about 30 years. And Isabel and Matilda's home is destroyed, and they end up in a big stadium, a big sports stadium, a little bit akin to what happened to those people in Hurricane Katrina. You can imagine a scenario like that. And they have to survive in this stadium. Eventually, they escape the stadium and they try to get on a boat, a little dinghy bound for Tasmania, which is a tiny island state in the south of Australia. The seas are very rough there. So it's the book is a kind of a story of survival, and in my story, the mother is the kind of hero, because I felt that there just weren't enough heroic depictions of motherhood. And of course, I'm interested in climate change as well. So the scene that I'm going to read takes place just as they're leaving the stadium to try and escape to a better life. At first, Isabel is knee-deep across the parking lot, and then as they travel downhill away from the river and the shorefront, skirting the eastern boundary of the CBD, she moves up to her waist in the stinking sludge. The self-control it takes just to walk on without faltering is a quiet heroism of a kind she's never experienced. Like her best moments as a mother, no one sees the work. It happens in silence and unobserved, but Isabel knows. She's often reflected that there must have been some folks who did in fact possess useful knowledge about how to get on after the market crash. People who came from poverty to begin with, or grew up in foreign places where times were always tough. Some old people might have remembered how to survive depression, digging down through the deep turf of their experience, remembering how they were taught to darn socks and make do. She should have asked her grandfather more questions. His grandparents had survived war and depression, living like that. Then she's read accounts of the potato famine, babies starving on filthy beds of straw. She's read of African children, vultures, the early years of Australian settlement. Some of what has transpired in her lifetime has been unprecedented, but not all of it. The hunger, the poverty, the scarce resources. It seems as though these things have always been a possibility, given that they have happened before. Yet when disaster came here, when it happened on the tree-lined streets of their own city in her lifetime, somehow no one was ready. Everyone professed such shock. Too busy what? Paying bills and shopping? Going to concerts? To restaurants? To bars? Isabel can't help but feel that some of the hardship she is facing now in the water is her own fault. She hadn't paid attention, hadn't cared enough to realize that she was being forewarned. Thank you.
Alice, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. You said in this book, and I mean this resonates on so many levels with me. Also, kind of the generational, the conflict not so much, but where you realize, wait a minute, I actually had relatives who grew up during the Depression or World War II, were impacted by that, and they passed on, and I didn't ask one question. I mean, I'm working on a side project, actually a documentary film about my family who were born at the tail end of World War II and were refugees as well. But that I mean, do you have is that resident does that come from your own life, where you feel like we live in this bubble of security, and one of the things that we could connect to, which would lead us forward, is to have conversations with our elders about troublesome times.
I totally feel that, and it really troubles me. I feel, I guess it comes down to this kind of question of whether we're thinking about history in the context of our own lives, and whether we feel or believe or think, the past experiences are relevant, and whether we can learn from them, or whether we kind of feel, I think in my generation, certainly I'm in my 30s, my contemporaries, my peers, we all, we've grown up in such affluence and privilege really here in Australia. We have really good quality of life. And so it seems as though the things that have been hard for other generations are sort of historic in the past, except that we have this looming climate disaster. So there's this kind of sense of deep uneasiness about the future and a lack of preparedness, because the kinds of preparation that we've been given for living are things about getting a good job and getting a mortgage. And
yes, getting a mortgage, that's the most important thing. That shows you that you grew up. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. Yeah, like those kinds of things, like those are the things that I've been furnished with skills around, and they're going to be completely useless as times become harder and harder. But I also kind of think there's a sort of a delight in these apocalyptic narratives for people in my world who are privileged, because there's a sense of enormous pressure. If you can do anything you want in the world, and the only thing that's preventing you from success are your own failings, then if you don't make it in some way, if you're not a self-made person, you feel that it's your own fault. And so there's a kind of delight in the idea that that'll all just get wiped away.
Right.
And of course, feeling that is a huge privilege. I don't know. It's interesting.
That is a really interesting thought. I mean, it's a line of conditioning, decades of conditioning about the we're not a society. Am I quoting Maggie Thatcher now? We're not a society. There's only individuals. There's no such thing, is what she said. We'll pick it up later. Let's go to Meg, who is also in the dystopia business. I'm bringing up a rock for the mermaid, where she can take her place, and I was going to ask Alice, but I'll ask her later what if dystopian novels create apathy, or if they compel us to action, or or if it's kind of both. That's something that we discuss here almost weekly at the book club. Meg, take a seat. No, you were right there. You go. Can you see the text of your book, or should I bring it closer? Bring the stand a little closer here to you. There you go.
I'm not in. I'll leave what's happening with my tail. I won't try to adjust that now.
No, the tail is magnificent. So what are you going to read for us? Because again, here we are with dystopia and climate. I'm getting disaster fatigue here, Meg. Why are you torturing us?
I'm not so sure. I always feel a bit ambivalent about the dystopia label, because today this is what's really happening here. Is that a dystopia, or is it reality? I mean, there's nothing in my book that hasn't happened in some way, shape, or form in the real world. I do think that writing in a dystopian vein is really fun, because all your characters are under enormous pressure, and that creates its own momentum, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Is my mic on? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. I didn't say anything very profound.
You said something very profound. Let me just paraphrase this real quick. Oh, you did. People didn't hear you in world. Yeah. No, Meg was saying that you have an uneasy relationship with the label, with the dystopian label. Why?
Oh, because I feel that everything that's in my book has happened in some way, shape, or form in the real world. And like, if we look at what's happening in our world today, is it reality or is it a dystopia? I think it's kind of a false divide to cordon off fiction in that way, although I understand why it's done. I just feel like we're living through dystopia anyway at the moment. So I think it's a bit of a false divide.
what are you going to read for us out of the Trespassers?
I'm going to read, I've changed my mind about what I was going to read. I'm going to read a passage that focuses on the youngest character in the book. There are 3 characters in the book. They all are on a ship full of migrants heading off into the unknown, fleeing a plague. Unfortunately, something comes with them onto the ship, and the youngest character is Cleary. He's almost 10 years old, and he's a young deaf boy. He's been deaf for several years. It happened suddenly after he caught one of the superbugs. There's a man on the ship who he calls Blackbeard, and Blackbeard knows that Cleary knows the secret. So Paul Cleary's being persecuted by this sailor at the journey.
A violent secret. You're not going to spoil anything. It's a violent secret, and there's a lot of noise there. I'm sorry. Sorry, I was noise is gone. Good. Cleary is deaf, as you said, and I just wanted to add that he plays an incredibly important role because he is witnessing something, and it's indicated that if he says something to his mom or anybody else, there will be a high price to pay, and they are on a ship from Europe to Australia. So they are in a closed environment where nobody can, jump ship.
It's a kind of pressure cooker environment, and it was very strange seeing all the cruise ships with people falling sick on the cruise ships earlier this year. I'm going to read a short scene where at anchor. It's nighttime. Blackbeard came to a halt directly beneath him. Cleary froze as the deck lights revealed the top of the man's head, a whirl of thinning hair, a gleam of pale scalp. The man stood at the foot of the mast, surveying the dark shoreline, fists on hips. Something fake or theatrical in his stance, like an adult playing at hide and seek, feigning ignorance of the child plainly visible nearby. His presence here no accident. Alone with his enemy, the guards nowhere in sight, Cleary resorted to prayer. He stayed completely still, melted into the mast. The man would not see him. The heart turned over in his chest, a heavy liquid roll. Blackbeard patted his pockets, pulled his mask aside, and lit a cigarette. The smoke snaked up through the rigging, as if seeking Cleary out. He breathed in shallow sips. Light offered no protection. The man was strong and could no doubt climb. Anyone hear him scream? He edge along the yardarm out of reach, head up into the furthest reaches of the rigging, seek a line too delicate to bear the man's full weight, shimmy to the very top of the mast, but then what? All at once, Blackbeard was in motion, climbing swiftly up the rat bars, face upturned, a hunter seeking out his quarry, coming for him. Before he could think, Cleary was scrambling up the rigging, away from his pursuer, hand over foot, instinct in motion. Above him, the next platform stuck out at a daunting angle, the rat line slanting backwards, a hurdle that would slow him, test his strength. He could sense the man gaining on him. Up or sideways? No time to risk the obstacle. Out along the yardarm, his only option. Squeezed through a thicket of cables, stepped onto a foot rope slung beneath the yard, and began sidling away from the mast. His fingers scrabbled for purchase, latched onto a wire overhead, bare toes, gripping the foot rope. Cleary made his way out into the darkness. Far below glinted the hard surface of the deck. Violent lurch, the rope bucking and wobbling beneath. Fighting to keep his balance, the wire digging into his fingers, Cleary glanced back to see the man bent double against the mast, preparing to give the rope another heave. This time he braced himself, heard the wild oscillations, clung to the wire, sought the rope, gained his footing and kept moving, taking neat tightrope steps, edging further out of reach beyond the outline of the deck. Black water glittered far below. Now the rigging trembled under a new weight. Blackbeard was coming after him, stepping quick and sure along the foot rope, nimble as a spider. Cleary sped up, but the man was gaining on him, the smell of stale sweat carried on the wind. Ex-Jock tore the foot rope out from under him, left him dangling by his fingers, legs peddling thin air. Swung over the void, feet seeking purchase, finding nothing. Man was almost on him when Cleary shut his eyes and let go. Thickening drop, a blow to his knee, a sharp bolt of pain as he struck the rail, bone glancing off metal. Then the full shock of impact, a blow punching all the air from his body. An orb of light above him shimmered, shrank, blinked out. Icy blackness closed over his head. I must apologise. Somebody started chainsawing a tree outside my house partway through that reading. I'm sorry, people.
Meg, that's wonderful reading. Please do close your mic. I think there's an issue with headphones. This was a wonderful reading, Meg. This is Meg Mundell reading from The Trespassers, a passage where Cleary, the little boy, is running away from Blackbeard on this ship. So there's a lot of action in this book. It's a thriller on top of the social commentary here. And what I especially liked is that you involve a journalist in a fairly small role, but it's important. This journalist is representing a lot of hope for really bad, really, I mean, brutal sort of capitalist scheme here that where the people who are putting this together, they go over dead bodies, but this journalist represents some hope, and then we'll see where it goes. I don't want to spoil anything, and it's important that, to me, as someone who says we live in a golden age of great investigative journalism, at the same time as we live in an age of manipulative, corporate media, that you put a character like that in. So really well done.
Thank you. I put a journalist in both of my books. They're very useful characters, I think.
Yes, actually, Broken Glass, Black Glass. Why do I say Broken Glass? Black Glass is here on the table. Your other novel, and which arrived after 3 months on a journey at my house. So I haven't read it yet. I'm looking forward to it. Oh my God, we have 15 minutes left in the stream show, and then we'll do Q&A and Hangout. So Damon, with his the author with the most books, is coming last. That's your punishment, Damon, for writing so much. You wrote a book that is called The Distraction. I was too distracted to read it. Where's my laugh track? Hello. But the only book that I have read of yours, Distraction, is still on order. The book that I read is The Art of Reading, which is really, really absolutely fantastic, and is really kind of summarizing in wonderful language what has been going through my head, the why reading is important to me personally and what I want to communicate to other people. So I'm not kidding you, Damon. I'm going to keep this book handy in my pocket and annotate it and with bookmarks in there, so when I encounter people in the park, I will hit them over the head with the wisdom. But
because that's how it works. Yeah, they don't actually need to read it. You can just beat people with the book. And there's a kind of magic where the virtues in the book just pass through their skin into their mind.
And the cool thing is, I mean, you go into detail and you put historical context there, and you quote a lot of important philosophers and writers, but it's not snobbish or elitist. It is very accessible, and you also, I mean, you like I said earlier, you highlight the importance of what sometimes is deemed the derogatory way escapism, frankly. By the way, your animation is awesome. You're distracting yourself through you're itching to get into a fight, I guess. I'm just mentioning it to the people at home. So what are you reading for us today, Damon?
Okay, so I'm going to read just from the beginning of The Art of Reading. I thought that was a nice entry point for people, but I'm going to read one of the epigraphs first, and that is Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian author. And a book is a thing among things, a volume lost among the volumes that populate the indifferent universe until it meets its reader, the person destined for its symbols. Okay, so I'm going to begin. The first chapter is called Liberating Pages, and the idea is this is something they can do for us, but we have to do it for them. We have to liberate what's on the pages. To my right is a small stained pine bookcase. It contains, among other things, my childhood. Stacked in muted burgundy and khaki buckram are classics like Aesop's fables full of blunt aphorisms for 4-year-olds. To be well prepared for war is the best guarantee of peace. Not far away is Richard Burton's translation of the Book of 1001 Nights with its formally phrased smut. He laid his hand under her left armpit, whereupon his vitals and her vitals yearned for coition. Still read after 7 decades, my mother's octavo magic faraway tree, mystery, adventure, and casual corporal punishment. I also have her Winnie the Pooh, printed the year my mother was born. 70 years on, her grandson now has Eeyore days. Good morning, Pooh Bear, if it is a good morning, which I doubt. But most important for me, standing out in black plastic leather and fake gold leaf, is the celebrated cases of Sherlock Holmes. Holmes was my first literary world, proudly bigger than anything read by my primary school peers. Conan Doyle's 800-page tome was a prop in my performance of superiority. This archaic lump of text helped me feel special. I was more clever, said the serious serif font, than the other 11-year-olds. More intellectually brave, said the ornamental binding, than my teachers. But there was more to the celebrated cases of Sherlock Holmes than my pretense. What I finally took from Conan Doyle's mysteries was not savoir-faire, but freedom, the charisma of an independent mind. This Victorian London, with its shadows and blood, was mine. I winced as Holmes thrust the sharp point home, pressed down the tiny piston, but the needle and its rush were my own to invent. Watson's gentlemanly heroism and Inspector Lestrade's mediocrity, all belonging to the little boy lying quietly on the Flocati rug. I realized that these dark marks on paper were mine to ignore or investigate, to enrich or evade. It was with this junkie detective that I first became aware of myself as something powerful, a reader. And that's that.
And that's Damon A. Young reading from The Art of Reading. It's extraordinary. And Damon, I want to ask you 2 things. Number one, is there too much reading? I think somewhere in there I binge read. Now, is binge reading wrong? Can it be wrong, Dr. Young?
Don't Dr. Young me, Drax.
I'm a doctor myself. Some people call me Dr. Exter, actually. Someone did.
Look, what I talk about in the book is binge reading Star Trek novels.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading them on Kindle, Amazon. And so what was happening was I was finishing one book and immediately starting another one because I could just download it. And I just go through book after book after book after book. And the problem there was not Star Trek novels. I stand by them. Some of them were incredibly good. Some of them were a little bit dodgy. The problem was that I was using this very comfortable, familiar world to kind of not look at myself in my own world. As Eva just mentioned in the chat, she saying she doesn't remember what she binge reads. I actually spoke about that in the chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember any of the plots of these Star Trek novels. It just kind of all mushes into one because it really didn't matter to me. It was just kind of something to keep me occupied while I distracted myself from life. And so the problem there again, was not the books. The problem was the way I was reading. There was a kind of ugliness to my inability to confront the world. So I have no problem with escapism. There are long passages on, Batman and comics and so on. The problem was that I was managing my own psyche poorly.
Mm-hmm. So you can distract yourself, though it has nothing to do with the material per se, right? It could actually be. Could you distract yourself from life with something that is deemed canon or very important? I don't know. Let's just say Don Quixote or Jorge Luis Borges, for that matter. Right? It doesn't have to be Star Trek.
No, it doesn't at all. And in fact, I think I mentioned in that chapter, I kind of used the philosopher A.J. Ayer to pull myself out of this Star Trek funk because of his very particular juvenile clarity. But another person might use A.J. Ayer to distract themselves because his work presents the universe as a falsely clear, falsely simplistic thing. And that could be very distracting. The idea that the universe is very simple. We could use false simplicity to distract ourselves from the subtlety and complexity of the world.
Right. You have a big fan here in the audience. Aziza Wolf says, "You look great too, Damon. Truly great." So Aziza, she has to go. She
Thank you very much.
Aziza is a wonderful, very accomplished person in her own right. Great artist. I'll tell you later. She's here in somewhat incognito, but thank you, Damon. So we are pushing against the clock, and this is always a big challenge with these big panels, where we're always running out of time, and it sucks. Frankly, I want to be here all day, and since it's 3 a.m. local time, I might as well stay up because usually I get up at 5 o'clock to read, for that matter. So we just have a few minutes left, and then we'll do a 30-minute post-game hanging out. People can hang out as long as they want, of course. We're open 24/7. A question that I wanted to ask in the very beginning is the big discussion with cultural representation that we have here all the time, and we had a panel on writers of color. Now, in terms of Australia, you are for white Australians of European descent. What about the cultural dominance of white Australians in Australia vis-a-vis Indigenous literature? Is Indigenous literature playing a role, and how is it being promoted, or is there an effort to make sure that there is a level playing field? Take it where you will. Please enlighten me on the situation if you have more information from the father or homeland or whatever you guys call it. I call my land the motherland.
I think Australia has, the same problems of structural racism that exist all over the world, but its own history of colonialism and violence. So we're not, I wouldn't say we're doing things any more fantastically than anywhere else in the world, but there is a really, really strong presence of extremely talented Indigenous authors in Australia, and they are just sprinkled all throughout the awards, and lots and lots of talent here.
Well, it's actually interesting. I googled. I was going to look. Oops, we have a mic feedback. Please do mute if you don't wear headphones. Please mute. There is actually a website, and I'm looking it up. I'll post it in a bit. When I was looking at the situation here on Google, there is a website for Indigenous literature. I have to locate it. Anybody else with an assessment of the situation on that front?
Well, I think the thing to know is that, like a lot of Indigenous cultures, presumably in a lot of parts of the world, storytelling has been part of the culture in Australia for, thousands and thousands of years. It's interesting, though. I was just thinking we definitely do have a very strong literary presence from some wonderful Indigenous writers who are, as Meg said, really highly awarded and revered, and they're writing amazing books, and a lot of emerging writers doing really interesting things too. But I just wonder, it's still quite problematic or tricky to speak as a settler Australian about what the perception of Indigenous writers of the literary community might be, because I feel that it's easy for me to say, oh, there's a great strong tradition, a great presence, but that may not be the perception from the Indigenous perspective. I'm not
that
sure.
is an excellent point. That's an excellent point. That's us. We are you just made me aware of something, that we are appropriating this conversation by me asking you to make an assessment of their situation while they're not even here at the table. Yeah.
It's earlier we were talking about Australia being quite intimate for writers. It's quite a small literary community, and that can be a really good thing if you're supported and you're surrounded by familiar faces. It can also be a problem for criticism, of course, because people don't necessarily want to have a go at their mates. But talking about diversity, if you think about it like a country town, a country town can be a super supportive, familiar place.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you're excluded from it? They can also be quite conservative, and Australian literature for a long time has excluded all kinds of people. I'll stop talking now.
Oh, we have to mute our mics in SL. That's something that I think is prevalent. The small town, the scary small town that pretends that everybody is part of the clique, but not everybody actually is. I posted a link here, AustralianIndigenousLiterature.wordpress.com, which I came across. And Anna, please do put titles in the local chat, and I will also include it in the reading list. We're out of time. I would maybe end with just an open round. Is there anything that you want to ask the other author here on stage? We have a few minutes left. Or is there anything that you want the audience to know about Australian literature that I haven't asked and that they need to know? Put yourself into the position of the reading ambassador of Australia. Of course, Meg, you're not eligible because you are a New Zealander, as I just learned. So
yes, it's hard to pick up my subtly different accent. I know.
I was just going to say, if there are people in the audience who are interested in the issue of, or interested in Indigenous cultures in Australia, there's a wonderful book, I think it was published last year, in the last couple of years, called Dark Emu, which was very popular in Australia and kind of revolutionised how a lot of settler Australians were understanding Indigenous land management and relationships to the land. It's a really awesome book. So that would be my recommendation. It's not necessarily a literary work in the sense of like a novel, but it's a work of non-fiction, and it's been wildly popular in Australia, and it's very informative and interesting.
Okay,
There's a version for children, Young Dark Emu. That's it doing. He put out for the younger audience as well, for Young Dark Emu.
So it's called Young Dark Emo. Okay, we'll put it on the reading list, and I will try to get a panel together, also nonfiction authors, and maybe we'll get some Indigenous authors on. It's always a challenge also with access. Second Life is accessible, but you do need to have a computer and internet connection. So I think sometimes the techies are a little bit too optimistic about the actual access. If the world still is very sort of divided into the haves and have-nots, even with internet infrastructure. And here we have a noob coming in on stage right at the top of the hour, or past the top of the hour. So that was a wonderful discussion. Thank you, Anna Waitley. I practiced your name. That's how it's pronounced.
It is. Thank you.
Ellis Robinson, Meg Mundell, and Damon Young. And thank you to our wonderful audience. Orange Planner put something here in the chat, which I think we should print on T-shirts. What was it? Readers do it under the cover. Did you just come up with that, Orange, or is that a thing? That's awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sticking around. This is a different time. We'll go back to our normal time at 12 o'clock next Wednesday. But before that, on Monday, Con Sweeney will host a new show, The Mystery Hour with Con Sweeney. And that is focused on mystery and thriller writers. Really excited about that. It's at 6 o'clock Second Life time, which is 3 a.m. my time. 2 hours before I get up. Maybe I'll make it. Also, big thanks to Arduin, who put games out in front of the venue. We're going to go outside and play around and have an informal post game and chat off the stream for an unlisted stream. And check out the reading list, bookshop.org/shop/Dragster Reads. You can click on any of the books that are lying here on the table or on the floor, and you can you get straight to the link. Now, I want to close with actually one quick question, the rounds. What is everybody reading here on the panel? And the audience can also put that into the local chat. What are you guys reading? Anna, what are you reading at this moment?
Me right now, I am reading.
Well, not right at this moment, of course.
Oh no, I'm
I hope
thinking
you're
because I'm
paying
reading
attention.
a really interesting book called The Mother Fault, which is an early reader copy by. Okay, oh no, Damon, quick! The Mother Fault.
The Mother Fault.
Her name's just gone. No, her name's just gone out of my head. I have some
Kate
memory issues.
Mildenhall.
Thank you. I was thinking Kate, and then I thought, no, that's just because most people are called Kate in the industry. Kate Mildenhall, who's amazing, and she's going to come on my OzChat YouTube show. So it's a really interesting, again, would fit in the dystopian bracket of, and while she wrote it before the virus, there's a lot of really, there's a few moments in there where you think, oh, wow, that really relates to the situation at the moment, but also environmental concerns with the fires happening around the time where she was finalizing the draft and everything. So it's really interesting. I'm really enjoying that.
And we'll put this also on the reading list, by the way. And of course, Anna, thank you for mentioning your podcast. People can check it out. There's links everywhere. You can also put it in the chat, and I'll make sure that we have it linked. It's a wonderful podcast. Ellis, what are you reading?
I'm reading the new novel by Irish writer Emma McBride. It's called Strange Hotel, and it's also a really good book for this moment because it's set inside. It's set in a series of hotel rooms, which seems to be pretty resonant with the experience we're having at the moment, being locked down in the pandemic. It's great.
And Meg, are you reading more dystopia, so you get even more? We just increase the apathy because we can't do anything anyways.
Can you hear me? I've lost my microphone. Oh. I'm reading The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. I've just about finished that. That is a dystopian book by a Japanese writer. And I've just got given a new book by Patrick Allington called Rise and Shine. He's an Australian author. So I'm about to just hop from one great book to another.
And I know what Damon is reading because he just got a call from Dan Brown, so he's reading the whole Dan Brown oeuvre, right, Damon?
Yeah, for the second time, every one. Yeah, I'm reading The Eighth Life, which is it's written in German, but it's by a German-Georgian author. It's about 1,000 pages, and it's essentially the story of Georgia, the country, not the US state, in the 20th century, told through a series of relationships and lives, published by Scribe in English. Very, very good. And I think she won all kinds of awards in Germany. And I'm also reading Swords Point by Ellen Kushner, which is a sort of fantasy novel, historical novel filled with characters who look very much like my avatar.
That's fantastic. People without headphones, please mute your mic. Oh, I get PTSD from my times from my days on the road. No, I'm exaggerating. What the people here in the chat give a lot of really cool books as well that I'm going to summarize. Let's see here. The Water Knife. Stella is reading The Water Knife by what's his name? Paolo. I can't pronounce his last name. Please put it in the chat. I have it in the shelf. I haven't read it yet. And what I'm reading here, this is the closer, and I'm going to put this on the big screen in the back here. I'm reading on schedule, like I said, with all the authors coming, but I'm also rereading Momo by Michael Ende. It's a German author. Everybody in Germany has grown up with Michael or Michael Ende. I recommend Momo to everyone. It's a quick read. It is so incredibly timely. It's about the gray man who are secretly they're stealing your time. And spoiler alert, this is a huge metaphor for the hamster wheel of modern capitalism that keeps us sort of in that wheel, suggesting we need to accumulate consumer goods. And I know that topic is explored in many, many different narratives, but Momo is just absolutely an amazing book. It's written for young folks, which means that you as an adult have to read it because it's just that good. And then you have to gift it to kids. And I just gave this book last Sunday to the daughter of a friend of mine. She's 11, and she's a big reader, so that made me feel really good. That's it for the book club today. Next week, we have Paul McAuley and Christopher Brown in conversation. Again, Monday is our spin-off show, The Mystery Hour, with Con Sweeney. And yeah, I would say thank you to my team, Strawberry in particular, different time for her, very late as well. And I would say, what would I say? What's my outro line? Where's my run sheet? See you all next Wednesday at 12 o'clock, Second Life time, right here at the Second Life Book Club.